think for a moment. Just think. What's happening right now in your mind? A stream of words, images, sensations, idea. It's a constant inner monologue, a never-ending internal dialogue. And we naturally assume, don't we, that these thoughts are ours, that they originate from within us, that they are a direct reflection of our individual minds, our unique selves. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if, shockingly, many of the thoughts swirling through your mind, the very voices in your head, are not truly your own? What if they are borrowed, implanted, influenced from sources outside of yourself? It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? The idea that the very fabric of our inner world, the thoughts that shape our perceptions, our beliefs, our very sense of self, might not be entirely self-generated. It challenges our fundamental sense of autonomy, our belief in our own independent minds. And yet, if we pause and examine our inner landscape with honesty and critical awareness, we might begin to notice something curious, a sense that some thoughts feel foreign, repetitive, programmed, like echoes of voices that are not our own. It's a paradox, a deeply unsettling one, but one that could hold the key to a profound liberation. What if freeing yourself begins with realizing you are not always the author of your own thoughts? What if the inner voice we so readily identify as ours is actually a chorus of external voices, internalized societal norms, and subtle forms of mental programming that we've absorbed throughout our lives, often unconsciously? What if true freedom, true individuality, true enlightenment begins with disentangling ourselves from this cacophony of borrowed thoughts, with learning to discern which thoughts truly originate from our authentic selves and which are simply echoes? Does this idea resonate with you at all? Have you ever had a thought that felt not quite yours? A thought that seemed to come from somewhere else? What are your initial thoughts on this provocative idea? To explore this unsettling possibility, we must first examine the very nature of thought itself and challenge the common assumption of thought ownership. Section 1. The illusion of my thoughts. The phrase "my thoughts" is so ingrained in our language, so fundamental to our sense of self, that we rarely question it. We assume that the stream of consciousness within our minds is inherently ours, a private and personal domain entirely under our control, generated solely by our individual selves. But is this assumption truly accurate? Let's delve deeper into the origins and influences shaping our inner mental landscape. Consider the sheer volume of thoughts that pass through our minds every day. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. A relentless internal chatter, a constant mental commentary on our experiences, our perceptions, our memories, our anxieties, our desires. Where do all these thoughts come from? Are they truly spontaneous creations of our individual minds, or are they, at least in part, responses to external stimuli, echoes of past experiences, internalized voices of authority, or even subtle forms of cultural programming that we have absorbed unconsciously since childhood? Questioning the origin of our thoughts is the first step towards discerning their true nature. Think about the immense power of societal conditioning and cultural programming. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in a sea of external influences: language, cultural norms, societal expectations, family values, educational systems, media narratives, religious beliefs, and countless other subtle and overt messages that shape our understanding of the world and our place within it. These external influences, constantly bombarding our developing minds, inevitably become internalized, forming the very framework of our thought patterns, our belief systems, and our habitual ways of perceiving reality. Are these internalized programs truly our thoughts? Or are they, in a sense, borrowed scripts, pre-written narratives that we are unconsciously reciting? The inner voice we so readily identify as ours may, in fact, be a complex social construct, a composite of internalized voices from our past and present environments. Think of the voices of your parents, your teachers, your friends, societal authorities, media personalities, and cultural narratives that you have absorbed throughout your life. These voices, often unconsciously, become woven into the fabric of our inner monologue, shaping our self-talk, our internal judgments, our aspirations, and our fears. Are these internalized echoes truly your authentic voice? Or are they simply borrowed voices, masquerading as your own? Discerning the difference is a crucial step towards reclaiming mental autonomy. This unsettling idea that our thoughts may not be entirely our own is not a new one. Throughout history, philosophers and spiritual traditions have explored the nature of thought, the illusion of the separate self, and the influence of external forces on our inner world. Section 2. Philosophical Perspectives on Thought Ownership. What insights can philosophy offer us in understanding this complex question? Can philosophical inquiry help us disentangle our thoughts from the chorus of external influences, and perhaps even point towards a path of mental liberation? Let's explore some illuminating perspectives. Buddhism, with its profound emphasis on self-inquiry and the nature of consciousness, directly challenges the notion of a fixed, independent self that owns thoughts. The doctrine of anatta, or no self, is central to Buddhist philosophy. It posits that the self, as we conventionally understand it, a solid, permanent, and independent entity, is ultimately an illusion. What we perceive as self is actually a constantly changing stream of experiences, sensations, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness itself, including thoughts. These are interconnected and impermanent phenomena, arising and passing away, not owned or controlled by a fixed, separate self. In Buddhist thought, thoughts are seen as impersonal phenomena arising due to causes and conditions, much like clouds in the sky or waves in the ocean. They are not inherently mine or yours, but rather natural occurrences within the field of consciousness. Identifying with thoughts, clinging to them as my thoughts, is seen as a source of suffering and illusion. The practice of mindfulness meditation, central to Buddhism, encourages observing thoughts with detachment, recognizing their impermanent and impersonal nature, and ultimately disidentifying from the illusion of thought ownership. Liberation, in Buddhist terms, involves realizing the no-self nature of thought and consciousness itself. Thoughts are to be observed, not owned. Stoicism, while a Western philosophical tradition, also offers insights into the nature of thought and external influences. Stoics, like Epictetus, emphasized the distinction between what is within our control, our thoughts, judgments, and volitions, and what is outside our control, external events, other people's opinions, and initial impressions. While Stoicism acknowledges that external impressions and stimuli will inevitably enter our minds, it stresses that our judgment and response to these impressions is what truly matters and what is within our power to control. We may not control the thoughts that initially arise, but we can control whether we accept them, identify with them, and act upon them. Stoicism empowers us to choose our response to incoming thoughts, regardless of their origin. Stoic philosophy encourages rational discernment and critical thinking in evaluating our thoughts. We are not to passively accept every thought that arises as truth or as inherently ours. Instead, we are to examine our thoughts, question their validity, and choose to align our judgments and actions with reason and virtue. Virtue, for Stoics, lies in this inner control, in our capacity to rationally assess impressions and choose our responses, rather than being passively swept away by external influences or unexamined thoughts. Stoicism provides tools for mental discipline, enabling us to become more discerning gatekeepers of our own minds, choosing which thoughts to engage with and which to let pass. Rationality and self-control are key to Stoic mental autonomy. Existentialist philosophy, while not directly addressing thought ownership in the same way as Buddhism or Stoicism, emphasizes the importance of authenticity and freedom from societal constraints and predetermined roles. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir stressed that we are condemned to be free, meaning we are radically responsible for creating our own meaning and defining our own essence, rather than passively accepting externally imposed definitions of self or thought. Authenticity, for existentialists, involves actively questioning societal norms, rejecting prepackaged identities, and forging our own unique path, including developing our own independent and critical thinking, free from unexamined societal programming. Existentialism calls for radical self-creation, including mental self-determination. These philosophical perspectives offer valuable frameworks for understanding the complex nature of thought and the potential for external influences. But in the modern world, these external influences are arguably more pervasive, more sophisticated, and more deeply embedded in our daily lives than ever before. Section 3. Modern influences on thought. What are the specific modern forces that might be shaping our thoughts, often without our conscious awareness? How are our minds being subtly programmed in the 21st century? Let's explore some key contemporary factors. Consider the pervasive influence of media and advertising. From traditional media like television and newspapers to the vast landscape of online platforms and social media, we are constantly bombarded with carefully crafted messages designed to shape our perceptions, influence our desires, and direct our behaviors. Advertising, in particular, often employs sophisticated psychological techniques, including subliminal messaging, emotional appeals, and repetitive narratives to subtly program our minds, creating desires for products and lifestyles that may not genuinely align with our authentic needs or values. Media narratives, both overt and subtle, can shape our understanding of the world, our political views, our social attitudes, and even our self-image, often in ways that we are not fully conscious of. Media can be a powerful programmer of thought. Social media algorithms further amplify this influence, creating personalized filter bubbles and echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs, limit exposure to diverse perspectives, and subtly shape our online realities. Algorithms curate the information we see, prioritize certain viewpoints, and can inadvertently or intentionally manipulate our perception of consensus and social norms. This algorithmic bias can subtly program our thoughts by constantly feeding us information that confirms our pre-existing biases, limiting our intellectual curiosity, and creating a distorted sense of reality, where dissenting viewpoints are marginalized or invisible. Social media algorithms can become personalized thought programming machines. Political and ideological narratives, often amplified through media and social media, also exert a powerful influence on our thoughts. Propaganda, misinformation, and emotionally charged rhetoric can bypass rational thinking and directly program our beliefs, often exploiting confirmation bias and tribal instinct. Groupthink dynamics within online communities and offline social circles can further reinforce these narratives, creating echo chambers where dissenting voices are silenced or ostracized. Political and ideological programming can subtly shape our values, our beliefs about the world, and our political identities, often leading us to adopt prepackaged thought patterns and unquestioningly accept dominant narratives, even when they are based on misinformation or manipulation. Ideological narratives can become powerful thought viruses. These modern influences, while pervasive, are not insurmountable. Recognizing the potential for external programming is the first step towards reclaiming mental autonomy and choosing our thoughts more consciously. Section 4. Reclaiming mental autonomy. If our thoughts are not always entirely our own, how can we regain agency over our inner world? How can we disentangle ourselves from external programming and cultivate a more authentic and independent mind? What practical steps can we take to reclaim ownership of our thoughts and choose our own mental direction? Let's explore some empowering strategies. The foundational strategy for reclaiming mental autonomy is cultivating mindfulness and conscious thought observation. Practice regularly observing your thoughts, as suggested by Buddhist tradition, with detachment and non-judgmental awareness. Notice the stream of thoughts passing through your mind without getting swept away by them, without automatically believing them, and without immediately identifying with them as yours. Treat your thoughts as mental events, as transient phenomena arising and passing away, rather than as solid, fixed, and inherently truthful representations of reality or yourself. Mindful thought observation creates space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to discern their nature and origin more clearly. Mindfulness is the key to disidentification and discernment. Develop strong critical thinking skills and actively question your assumptions, beliefs, and thought patterns. Don't passively accept every thought that arises as truth or as inherently beneficial. Instead, examine your thoughts with rational inquiry. Ask yourself, where did this thought come from? Is it based on evidence or assumption? Is it serving my well-being and my values? Is it truly my thought? Or is it an echo of an external voice or a pre-programmed narrative? Cultivate a healthy skepticism towards your own thoughts, especially those that are emotionally charged, repetitive, or feel foreign. Critical thinking is the mental firewall against unconscious programming. Actively seek diverse perspectives and challenge your own filter bubbles and echo chambers. Intentionally expose yourself to viewpoints that differ from your own. Engage in respectful dialogue with people who hold different beliefs, and read news and information from a variety of sources, including those that challenge your preconceived notions. This intentional exposure to diverse perspectives broadens your mental landscape, helps you identify your own biases, and reduces the risk of being trapped in echo chambers where pre-programmed narratives are constantly reinforced and alternative viewpoints are suppressed. Diversity of input is crucial for mental liberation and independent thinking. Practice cultivating inner silence and stillness regularly. In the constant noise and external stimulation of modern life, it's essential to create space for quiet contemplation, meditation, and simply being present without the constant chatter of thought. Spending time in silence allows you to quiet the external voices, to reduce the influence of external programming, and to connect with a deeper, more authentic inner awareness that transcends the surface level of thought. Inner silence is the fertile ground for authentic self-discovery and for discerning your own true voice, distinct from the chorus of borrowed thoughts. Silence is not emptiness, but a space for deeper listening and authentic knowing. These strategies, mindfulness, critical thinking, diverse perspectives, and inner silence, are not about eliminating thoughts altogether, which is neither possible nor desirable. They are about reclaiming agency over our inner world, about discerning the origin and nature of our thoughts, and about choosing to cultivate a more authentic, independent, and consciously directed mind. This brings us to our conclusion and the transformative power of realizing that your thoughts may not always be your own. The revolutionary idea is this: questioning the ownership of our thoughts is not a sign of mental instability, but a sign of intellectual awakening. It is a courageous step towards self-awareness, mental autonomy, and a deeper understanding of the complex forces that shape our inner world. Realizing that many of our thoughts may be borrowed, programmed, or externally influenced is not disempowering, but profoundly liberating. It frees us from the illusion of being passively controlled by our thoughts and empowers us to become more conscious creators of our own mental landscape. Discerning thought origins is the key to mental liberation. Paradoxically, by acknowledging that our thoughts may not always be ours, we actually gain a greater sense of ownership and agency over our minds. By disentangling ourselves from the chorus of external voices, by questioning pre-programmed narratives, by cultivating critical thinking and inner silence, we can begin to discern our own authentic voice, our own genuine values, and our own unique path. True mental freedom is not about eliminating external influences entirely, which is impossible, but about becoming consciously aware of them, critically evaluating them, and choosing which influences to embrace and which to reject, based on our own values and our own authentic self-direction. Freedom is found in conscious discernment, not in passive acceptance. So, challenge the assumption that all your thoughts are inherently yours. Embrace the unsettling, but ultimately liberating possibility that many of them are not. Cultivate mindfulness, critical thinking, seek diverse perspectives, and practice inner silence. Choose to become a conscious observer of your own mind. Choose to question the origin and nature of your thoughts. Choose to reclaim ownership of your inner world and cultivate a more authentic and independent mental landscape. And in doing so, you may discover a level of mental freedom, clarity, and self-direction that you never thought possible. Your journey to mental autonomy, to authentic thought ownership, begins now.